Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of the Thyroid Answers podcast. And today I have a returning special guest, the one, the only, Dr. Carrie Jones. Carrie, how are you today?
Oh my gosh, Eric, I love being on your podcast. I just like talking to you. So this is going to be good.
Well, that's good because I like talking to me too. And it's better when I'm talking to somebody other than me. But it's good because I think we both like to get a little nerdy with some of the science stuff. And, my gang in my home, as soon as I start talking nerdy science, it's pretty much everybody clears the room. It's like somebody with bad gas. You know what I mean? It's just like everybody clears. So it's been a little bit since we had you on the podcast, and there's been a little change in your life since the last time you were on the podcast. So you're in a new place, new home. And so people know, I think most people know Carrie Jones because of her work with Precision Analytical and the Dutch lab and all the education. But where are you now? Because you're not there. And tell us what you're doing. Tell us who you're with and what you're doing.
In January of 2022, so this year, I switch platforms to Rupa Health. So I'd been with Dutch for almost 9 years. This will be their 10th year that they've been around. And Rupa just gave me the opportunity for a bigger platform. So Dutch is amazing. Obviously, hormones is my thing. That's what I live and breathe and teach about. But it was one test. And by moving to Rupa, we have 26, 28 tests at the moment on the platform, close to 3,000 markers that we offer. And so I'm the head of medical education there. And it gave me a lot of personal experience to learn a lot of subjects, I don't know a lot about, to meet a lot of experts that I normally wouldn't get to meet because, it's not hormones, but I also get to continue to work with Dutch. I still talk to the owner and their VP quite regularly. And I still do some teaching for them. My best friend is still there. So I left, but I still have a lot of great connections with them. So it's just platform switches.
All right. So there's some people, everybody knows who Carrie Jones is, right?
Well,
right.
About that.
But you're now with Rupa Health. So what is Rupa Health? So for the practitioner or the person who's a client or patient of somebody who's involved, who's interested in their health and well-being, what is Rupa Health and what does it have to offer to the practitioner or the individual person?
It's one-stop shopping for all the lab work that you would order. So as a practitioner, instead of having to go in and out of each lab portal, for example, let's say you log in your Dutch portal and order a test for a patient, then you get out of that, you get into your DSL and order a GI map, you get out of that, you get into Great Plains, you order an organic acid, and on and on and on. This is one-stop shopping. So you log into one account, your Rupa account, you place all the orders for the same patient in one place, and Rupa handles the entire back end. So they handle the ordering, the questions, the payment, everything back and forth between the patient and getting them the kit. The results come back to the portal, the Rupa portal, and then you as the practitioner get to see everything in one place. So instead of having to either download it or hope it integrates with your EMR, your electronic medical records, you can just peek at everything in one place on Rupa. And Rupa tells you where in the process it is too, which is nice. So let's say, Eric, you're ordering labs for me and you've ordered 3 labs for me. And you're like, where are those labs? You can check and see in one place. Okay, Carrie's Dutch is done. Carrie's, Great Plains is still in processing, and, Carrie's organic acid looks like it just got there. And so then that helps you as a practitioner. So as a patient, we are not direct to consumer. However, as a patient, if your practitioner uses the Rupa platform, you're going to get the email that says, hi, we're Rupa Health. Labs were ordered for you. Let's be friends and let's help you get your lab kits and answer any questions for you. So it's really easy.
So then they have one place to go if they're getting 2 or 3 tests done and they got questions on the test and how to do the test and they can't get a hold of the practitioner, they could go there and Rupa Health will help them from getting it, getting the kit to how to do it, right?
It's like the tech background, the back end. So it's really nice for like the individual practitioner who doesn't maybe have a front desk or a medical assistant or just somebody who's helping them with all these ordering and organizing. And it's really great even for the large clinic. We have several large clinics who have entire full-time employees dedicated to finding labs, ordering labs, tracking down labs, coordinating labs, and it can be a lot. And so to have it in one portal, one login makes it really nice and convenient. So it's I wish I had it in practice. I had a full-time, when I was in practice, I had a full-time medical assistant, and he spent a lot of times of his day tracking down labs, finding labs, looking for labs, importing labs.
And it is a challenge. I mean, it's because sometimes you order the test, and some labs are really good at giving you updates that, hey, it went out and it's in shipment. Here's the tracking number. And some labs don't give you much background information. So if it hasn't showed up, you're like, hey, where's that lab? Well, we sent it. And patient's going, what's the tracking number? Oh, I didn't get the tracking number. So now I got to go back and call. So from a practitioner standpoint, it's a great place to order stuff. For a client, it's a place where if your practitioner is involved, it's like it's a great resource to help you with the organization of getting your tests done and completed.
Yeah. Especially as a patient, as a patient and you order a couple different labs on them, they're also having to deal with maybe 2 or 3 or 4 labs, depending what you're doing with to work them up. So as a patient who's new to healthcare, doesn't understand the lingo, doesn't understand the difference between a blood draw, saliva test, a urine test, or a poop test, which is, it's kind of overwhelming. And so to have all these labs coming at them, if you order it off multiple portals, maybe doesn't make compliance the best. Things get missed, the wrong sample gets sent to the wrong lab. They forget to fill out the About Me form, which is called a requisition form. And so one-stop shopping, it makes it streamlined.
And I've talked to a couple companies that I order from, and I'm like, hey, you got to make this simpler for the client, because most of these people are struggling with brain fog and fatigue and not thinking well. And so it has to be as simple and streamlined of a process for the client, right? Because I think one of the customer service people I talked to was like, well, they should be able to figure it out. I'm like, do you know who we're giving these kits to? These are people who are struggling with just getting by daily life, right? They don't feel good. And you're going to give them some kind of, it's almost like reading a foreign language with some of the tests, like what to do. And you're afraid to do it wrong because you just spent a bunch of money on a test. And oh my gosh, am I going to get it right? I can't get a hold of my practitioner. And, as much as we would love to be in constant communication with our clients, it's hard. I mean, I look at my message portal and my platform, at the start of the day, I try and clear it out, but by the end of the day, there's 20, 30 messages there. It's like, plus your email, plus everything else. It's like, you can't always be there. So this is a good resource.
Yeah, but most definitely.
There's another aspect to it, and that's the educational part. So since you're the head of education, who are we developing an educational platform for? Is this geared to the physician? Is this geared to the...
So right now it's entirely geared to the practitioner on the Rupa platform. In the future, for patients, education will probably be developed for patients. Now I say that the majority of education is geared toward the practitioner, but our social media, our brand new podcast, which you were on, the Root Cause Medicine podcast.
I know, I got to post that.
That is geared to both. Anyone who wants to listen, can get that education, but we do, for practitioners, kind of have like behind the scenes, like once you log into your portal, there's an entire university, so to speak, of, classes and now courses that will be coming, and information. So right now it's predominantly to practitioners, but we do want patients educated for the reason you just said. They don't feel well, they have brain fog, they're tired, and they're trying to just understand this condition or what they've been told. So it's to aid the practitioner or help the practitioner. Okay, you just told your patient you're going to work them up for SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Maybe they've never heard of it. They have no idea what that means. They think, they don't know what the acronym, how to spell the acronym. But if they got some education, if they ordered it through Rupa and in the process also got a video of, hey, here's 10 or 15 minutes on what SIBO is, how helpful would that be? And how empowering is a patient to go, all right, cool, I get it now. Like, it just reinforces, oh yeah, my practitioner just said this, and now I'm getting it for the second time. Because it takes 7 to 9 times for us to hear something, for it to finally really sink in as humans. And so that kind of education will likely be coming as well. But our big goal is support the practitioner.
Yeah. So I think it's great to put stuff out for the client, because that's really important that we have a trusted source to be able to put that kind of information out. Because listen, in an appointment with a client, and we're going over blood work and talking about their signs and symptoms and what changed, and a new support protocol and dietary changes and lifestyle factor we're working on. And then they leave that with their head maybe like, whoa, right? And then they go, what do I have? What was it? What was it? He said, I mean, I heard it, but I don't, and I know he's explained it to me, and we can give them documentation, but I think it's really great if they can go back and look at a video, look at pictures, right? I'm a very visual learner. So I think when I see pictures and I hear somebody tell it to me again, and then I can look at the stuff and read stuff, that kind of does reinforce it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, I learned a long time ago in practice, and I think, the patients listening to this will understand it, that when I'm explaining stuff to patients, I would get that glazed, everyone would have this glazed wide eye, like, I don't understand I don't know that hormone, hormones is my thing. So I'm talking about estrogen or testosterone or estrogen detoxification. And they're like, I don't know what that means. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it correctly. All I know is I feel hormonal, but I don't know what that means. I feel like crap. And so I was like, okay, learned a long time ago. I really need to, you and I are in a world where we can use the acronyms. We can use the big words. We can, that's easy. But when I talk to my mom, even my husband's married to me. And still, he's like, what's that again? What's that again? What does that mean again? He's like, I don't know. Just give me the supplements. I'll just swallow them, And it's the same with education. With our education, it has to be like the way you set up your podcast, like you started your podcast with the basics so that when people are new to thyroid, they don't jump in the deep end. They start at the stairs and learn the basics about the thyroid. And it's the same for any condition.
And I think you do a fantastic job of kind of breaking it down to real simple terms for people. I think we do. I think we forget as physicians because we're so used to talking about it. I think I was running, explaining food and, loss of tolerance of foods to somebody. And they're like, what? Like, what does that actually mean? And,
yes.
I was just like, well, you've lost tolerance, but they're like, but what does that mean? And I was like, okay, look, there's people in your life that when they come into the room, you light up, right? I said, there's people in there that come into the room, you could give them or take them. You work with them every day. If they left, you wouldn't care. And if they're there, it doesn't care. But there are people that come into your life and for whatever reason, you just cannot tolerate it. Your blood pressure goes up. You want to grab a hold of them and choke them. That's loss of tolerance. Now I get it. So when I eat that food, my system gets angry. Yes. And now you get inflammation and your system's pissed off for a while. Next 3-4 days, you're going to be pissed. Your system's pissed off. Okay. Now I can understand it. Loss of tolerance. I didn't understand before. My body's pissed off at the food. I get it. I'm like, right. But here's the good news. Just like you can gain tolerance for that person again, if they apologize for whatever they did wrong. If you give that food a break and support your digestion and heal that kind of leaky gut barrier, you may regain tolerance for that food, right? So it's those simple analogies that I think even in the process of educating the practitioner, that's what I love about listening to and watching some of the stuff you do is you break that down into simple terms that as the practitioner, they're learning the high end, but they need to be able to explain it in a very simplistic way sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes we're not good at it. Right. We're just not really good at it because we're not used to talking to people I don't want to say a dumbed down, but a version where the average person would understand what's going on with their physiology.
And it's like that in all industries. I mean, my husband's retired military. When he was active duty and he was with his, active duty mates and they were talking in complete military acronym terms, it was a foreign language. I had no idea. And when I would be on the military base and people are asking me all these questions, or I'd be in an office because it's the spouse and they're asking me, and I'm like, I don't, it's not the language that I speak. I don't know. In aviation, you get on a plane and they use the word lavatory. Do you use the lavatory? And I mean, I've heard people like, I don't know what that is. They're like, it's the bathroom. Do you need to know where the bathroom is? Like, just say that.
Yeah. It's funny about it. You bring up the military. My brother's been, 30 years in the military and same thing. He would talk in acronyms or send me like an email with all I'm like, dude, I have no idea what that is. All right. So let me ask you, because we know the role, we know what your game plan is. You're trying to increase education around some of the tests that are available and just how to interpret the tests, which I think is really important. But that's going to lead me into the next thing, which is, what do you see as like the biggest challenges facing the functional medicine community at this point in time?
Wow. Ooh, that's a good one. So, honestly, it still, to me, hinges around education and accessibility. So what you may have noticed, and I'm sure a lot of people have noticed, and if you haven't noticed, now that I'm going to say it, you're going to see it in every ad that pops up on your social media, the amount of startup companies that have the at-home testing. Have you noticed that? So whether it's something you finger stick yourself with, something you pee on, something you spit in and either mail back, or you scan a QR code and the app to your phone, the amount of these at-home take control of your health, be empowered tests has gone through the roof. The people are demanding it. The need is there. People maybe like their practitioner. They like their primary care. Like, I like my primary care. She's great. She's super nice. She knows nothing about functional medicine, which is fine. That's not what I need her for. I have resources for that, but not everybody does. And so I think the biggest challenges are, I feel like crap. I get some lab work or don't, and I get told it's normal or it's expected, or, there's nothing we can do, which we know for the most part is not true. It's very short visits because the model, like when I go see my primary care, the model is acute care. Are you dying? Is there something wrong with you? Do you just need a quick physical and then on to the next patient, which is how it's designed. Whereas in functional medicine, it's designed differently. Again, but not everybody has access to that. So the big challenges I see are, what's wrong with me? I feel like crap, but my doctor keeps telling me I'm fine. I'm normal. My labs are normal, but I don't feel normal. And then I would like to get into functional medicine as a patient. I'd like to see somebody, but I can't afford it. My insurance doesn't cover it. I don't know where to go. Who's reputable? So these are the two challenges that I see trying to be actively solved from a number of ways right now. So it's really exciting, having been in the field as long as I've been in it. I've been in the functional medicine field 23 years. I haven't been practicing 23 years. I've just been in it 23 years. And so it is really exciting to see how far it's come, and their companies are trying for the accessibility and the education, but I think we still have a long way to go.
I would add to that is that, because I see this from people ordering those home tests and then bringing those home tests to an initial consultation. Hey, I had this test done and this test done. And the biggest challenge I see for that is all the stuff looks sexy and looks like it's the right thing to do when you read the ad because it's great marketing. But is it actionable? And do you have any idea how to interpret what that stuff is?
Right.
And I think for the person coming to the functional medicine space, running a test is one thing. Reading the lab result is another thing. And interpreting the results and knowing then what to do about that is a whole different thing, right?
Right.
And so I think it's great. A lot of people are trying to give control back to the client. I think the problem is that then people are buying all kinds of tests and say, hey, I did a great GI test. And you're like, no, there's no functional markers of your GI tract there. You don't have any idea of the inflammation load. There's no intestinal barrier markers. There's no bile acid markers. There's no, they're thinking, hey, it's got my bacteria. Yeah. Okay. But that could change tomorrow, right? Depending on what you're doing. So I think that becomes part of the challenge for the client for sure. And
it also concerns me in that regard of spending the money. Again, I think it's a great first step. I'm glad these companies are out there trying to bring functional medicine to the market, to the consumer. But also, just like you said, people come to you and go, okay, I ordered online on my own accord these 3 tests. What do I do? And you're like, well, actually, you actually need this 4th test, or we need a bigger, broader test. And they're like, oh, I have enough money to see you, but I spent all my money on these 3 tests.
Yeah.
You can't do anything with these tests. And so that's what it's not that I don't think at all that these companies are trying to take advantage of people, because people are desperate and they don't feel good. But I definitely, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, because I warned people like, hold on, you may not need that test. I mean, even when I worked with Dutch, people, oh, I'm hormonal, I'm going to do a Dutch test. I'm like, well, hold on. I don't know that's the first test you need.
Right.
You might actually need a GI test. You might actually need to check your thyroid first. You might actually have other things going on that downstream are affecting your hormones. Hormones aren't the problem to begin with. It's upstream from there. But if you spent all your money and said, okay, I just spent a couple $100, I got this hormone test, what's wrong? Fix me. I'm like, well, actually what we needed to do was this. And that's where I get in this rock and a hard place of, I wish we had more accessibility to practitioners or education or some programs or something to help people navigate this. And the other big thing that I'm finding is that group visits, right? Group visits are a big thing, or group masterminds, group classes, which is fantastic. I was just in a mastermind of just females in their 20s. And you can only take it so far in a class. You can join a class, and these classes can be absolutely wonderful. But at the end of the day, all of them, it was a small group that I was helping a friend with. And at the end of the day, all of them were like, yeah, but what do I do? What do I do? Like this program is wonderful and I'm learning a lot, but like my result is X and her result is Y. So what do I do about this test as opposed to her over there, my friend over there in the same class? Yeah. And again, it's that one-on-one that becomes tricky, because we can educate as much as we can. That only brings us so far. We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm super positive about it, but I do see the frustration and I don't blame them.
And the problem is this is a different model, right? Yeah. Versus the allopathic model, which is focused on one diagnosis, one treatment. Right. In the functional model, we've got a diagnosis, but we've got 10 to 20 potential causes that we have to wade through. Yeah. And the way to wade through some of that stuff is looking in detail at your health history, your health timeline, your signs and symptoms, and your other labs, right? I had a discussion with somebody earlier, and we're talking about the Dutch test. And I said, well, it's rare that I would ever look at a Dutch test on its own. I mean, right? I've got blood work in front of me. I've got the Dutch test in front of me. And I'm looking at the interpretation based on their signs and symptoms, what experiences or symptoms. That may look like that, but that's not the symptoms they're experiencing, or this value is normal, but it's totally inappropriate for the person I'm talking to. Like we were talking, we had a discussion on the catecholamines on the Dutch test. And I'm like, yeah, but they're normal, but they're not appropriate for you.
Right.
If you're super chill and your catecholamine metabolites are low, that's awesome. Right. But that's not who you are. You have anxiousness, you have anxiety. And so those values are in the normal range, but they're normal, but inappropriate for you, which indicates that maybe we have a detoxification problem. Right. And if I look at the page 3 of the Dutch, I can see I've got problems with phase 1, phase 2. And I look at my DHEAS and may see maybe I get some indications of sulfation issues. And then I look at their general blood chemistry panel and get confirmation of detoxification issues. Like, yeah, I know that's normal. Somebody told you that was normal. It ain't normal. It's normal, but it's inappropriate for you, right? So
I tell this story all the time of one of my best friends who, speaking of the catecholamines being normal, so when she gets stressed out, we both get stressed out about the same thing in school. She would get stressed all day, heart racing, feel like she's vibrating all day long. Couldn't figure it out. I'm like, you're still stressed out over that? Like, man, I left that hours ago. I don't feel stressed even a minute. So for those listening, so she got the Dutch test and found out the catecholamines are your dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine, or adrenaline. So on the testing, her adrenaline looked fine, and actually it looked low for her. It was low, but what she had was the inability to get adrenaline out of her system. So think of like a clogged sink. So coming down the drain was just drip, like not much, right? Like to be drained out of the house. So if that's the test, you would go, oh man, this is weird. The water dripping out is quite low. Yeah, because it's filling up the sink and overflowing. Like it can't get out. And so it's that it looked low, which some people might be like, oh, that's weird, or that's good. It's like, no, it was low because she literally can't get it out of her body. So on the test, it showed up low. So anyway, so it's that's like a perfect example of for you, right? Like for you, it's not what we want. For you, we can read deeper into that, but that's hard to get across in a book or, in a webinar or in a large group setting where you're trying to scale and help 30 people at once in a cohort. Because if they're right in front of you, anxious, then you can go, oh, here, I see it.
Yeah. So I think like doing those group classes, I think that works well for getting the general information. But then again, the one-on-one stuff, when it comes down to the end of the day, if you've done the low-hanging fruit stuff you can do, that's where you really need the one-on-one coach, physician to help you understand how to interpret and how to
and we hear that, right? We totally have patients that are like, I've read books, I sleep, like I'm doing the sleeping, I'm doing the breathing exercises, I meditate a couple times a week, I've got my diet dialed in. They're like, I've literally checked off all the books from the book, or all the boxes from the books, the groups, the classes, the coaching, what have you. And still I feel, I'm like, right, exactly. That's where, when you ask, like, where do I see the frustration, or where do I see the struggle of functional medicine? That's where I'm still like, how do we get that last piece to really help people individually?
Yeah. So I got some bullet points. So I want to hear your opinion on these things that I think might be challenges from a functional medicine perspective, right? One of the ones I see, and if you think it's incorrect, you let me know. But if you think it is correct, then give me some feedback on it. Philosophy. One of the bigger problems I see is that I'm happy to see a lot of people coming into the functional medicine space. I'm happy to see people from a totally allopathic model coming to functional medicine. I think that's great. But what I see that's coming with it sometimes is a allopathic philosophy, and they're using supplements with an allopathic philosophy. I call that greenwashing of medicine. I could have stole that from somebody, I don't know, but I that's what I see. And as I'm kind of work with some practitioners to help them see a little bit differently, I'm like, you're trying to bring your principles that you learn in allopathic medicine to functional medicine, and it's two different philosophies. And the reason your client's on 20 supplements is because you're trying to fix everything with the supplement instead of looking back and saying the signs and symptoms are an indication of a problem, not something I need to mask with supplements, and look at more to the root cause. Do you see that as a potential issue? And if you do, how do we go about fixing that? Yeah.
I used to work in a clinic outside of Portland with an MD, very traditional MD, who had brought me on. And she at first attempted to do that. She was okay with me as a naturopathic doctor having long visits using naturopathic philosophy, root cause. That was great. But for her, she had traditional visits every 15 minutes. And so she was going to fit functional medicine into 15 minutes and prove me wrong. And she got a lot of complaints. She had a lot of really unhappy patients. They just switched to me because they were like, she can't do anything in 15 minutes. All you're doing is masking or band-aiding or switching out a statin for red yeast rice, or, whatever it is. You're just switching out the sleep medication for the sleep herb. But yet I still have to take something. I'm still not really sleeping. And so then once she understood that, then she started to shift, and she actually went and has made huge changes. She got a whole lot more training and has a totally different view now, and sort of has left a lot of her original allopathic philosophy behind, and has made that shift. And so, but it took her getting the feedback from her patients, really unhappy patients, and seeing that the model just doesn't work. You're going to get you're just going to get these repeat people over and over again, are like, I still can't sleep. That herb didn't work, right? Like that nutrient didn't work. Whether it's Ambien or skullcap, like still can't sleep. And so she got that feedback. Now, I think that's where a lot of the big education and trying to model and teach, which is my goal, right? Is to teach from the top down, about literal root cause medicine, no matter what philosophy background you come from, is that it personalized and individual, and functional, naturopathic, whatever you want to call it, it does take longer than 8 to 15 minutes most of the time. You can't fit acute care into a chronic problem.
Yeah.
We need acute care. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying, like if I break my ankle, don't come to me. I'm not going to my colleagues. I am going to somebody who does acute care. But if I have chronic GI issues, if I have chronic hormone issues, if I have chronic autoimmune, you can't fix that in 15 minutes by plastering 20 supplements on it.
No. And it's going to take time, right?
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, take these and I'll see you in 6 months and we'll see how you did.
Right.
It is oftentimes meeting more frequently, trying strategies, seeing how the change goes, modifying strategies. And so it really is a bit different of an approach. And I think that's the biggest challenge I see is people and great, they're coming into the thing, but that's the thing I say, you got to change, because I came from that model too. And you have to really start to change the philosophy. And I think sometimes people this person's a functional medicine practitioner. Like everybody that hangs up the shingle of a functional medicine practitioner practices the same.
Right.
And we don't always, most of us don't, because it's really based on our how long we've been doing this, our skill level, our expertise, how geeky we are about mechanisms of actions and principles of function versus I just want to follow a protocol, which is my second point. I think sometimes we see too many people wanting to know, me included sometimes, what's the protocol for adrenal fatigue, right? Or what's the protocol? What's the supplement that's going to fix my thyroid, right? Like, just tell me, if somebody has leaky gut, just tell me what I'm supposed to do with them for the next 30 days to fix it. Like, which 3 supplements do I do, right? Yeah. Versus what I think we need to do a better job is have people thinking about mechanisms of action and principles. Like, okay, if I'm glucose resistant, right, or insulin resistant, I always hear people, especially from the physician side of stuff, you have to get your insulin resistance under control. Okay, doc, but if have we listened to what they're eating? They're already low carb. Have we considered the fact that maybe those cells don't want glucose because they're operating from a different state, which is my third question to ask you. But do you see do you think we're doing pretty good? Or do you think we still need to keep driving that education and training towards principles versus protocols?
So honestly, I think it's a mix. Working at Rupa and having a lot of and actually working at Dutch, working with a lot of brand new practitioners, either new to functional medicine or new grads out of medicine just in general. What's the protocols? A huge question that we get all the time. And I understand, as a new practitioner or new to the space, you just want somewhere to start. So I'm okay with, you have no experience with herbal, adrenal, HPA axis, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis support. Here's a list. Here's some companies. Here's a couple ones that are the star favorites of the group. Pick one and let's get you experience. Because if you're like, look, I'm new to functional medicine. I've been in medicine, but I'm new to functional medicine less than a year. Like, all right, you literally have no experience with any of this. So let's just give you a protocol to start with. And what I find is that a lot of these practitioners over time, like the training wheels come off. They learn and they're like, all right, I used to start with this herb. I don't need more. Here's why. Now I use this herb, or I used to do this and now I do that. So I'm not opposed to protocols, especially for the newbies in the beginning who are trying to learn and wrap their head around and are like, Carrie, I just don't know where to start. Like, I don't even know how to pronounce that herb. I'm like, yeah, cool. All right, let me help you. But what I don't like is like this protocol fixes all leaky gut, all of it. Let's write a book. Let's write an article about it. Let's put it in a webinar. Like, this is the magic 3 things that fixes all leaky gut, period. I'm like, no, that's not true. Like, don't even try. So I think there's a difference between protocols and philosophy when you're just trying to get your feet under you, and this cures everything. That's not true.
Yeah. And to be fair to the practitioners who are listen, that's how I started, right?
Same. I mean, right? Me too. I'm in hormones. When somebody talks to me about mold, I'm like, I don't know where to start. Like, where do I start? What would you start with? You know?
Yeah.
And then eventually I'm going to get my feet under me, even working at Rupa, learning all these tests that I had never run before. Like, I got to start somewhere. Teach me how to start somewhere, and I will figure it out. Right. I've years of experience with hormones. I've figured that out. It's the new stuff. That's how you get your feet under you. But I don't like when somebody says this protocol is the panacea for everything. No, it's not.
So for the listener, like when you see that somebody says, hey, if you just do my 30-day leaky gut protocol, your gut's going to be fixed. Maybe not.
But probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, it's not. And we wish it was that simple. Just like when somebody says, hey, here's the thyroid supplement. If you take this makes your gut gland work better. Maybe not. But that's usually the easy, low-hanging, easy situations. But definitely the sicker you are, the more chronically ill you are, those simple, just take this for a couple of days and it'll be better, that often does not work. It is it's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Ready? I think too many physicians, allopathic, even in functional medicine as well, treat or work with people with the assumption that they're operating in a homeostatic regulatory mode versus an allostatic regulatory mode. So for the listener, right, somebody assuming you're perfectly healthy, you just have this thyroid is not, you're just not making enough thyroid hormone. But your body, there's nothing else going on in your body. Your body's in a perfect balance, right? Except for this one system. And allostasis is a regulatory system where you're in an excessive stress situation and you have to turn systems off from the manufacturing process from this to conserve energy and shift energy towards more self-defense and cell defense and self-defense, right? So do you see that or do you do not see that?
I see that even in like the comments and DMs I get on social media from people who say, there's nothing wrong with me. Everything is fine, except I have this really bad eczema, except I have major constipation, except my PMS and periods are horrible, but everything else about me is fine. I'm like, probably not.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. I get I totally understand it. But as I say all the time, the body's like a spider web. Like if you touch any part of a spider web, the entire thing vibrates. It's the same in the body. It's constipation. Anything GI related doesn't just stay in the GI, right? Like this isn't Vegas. No part of your body is Vegas where it just stays there. If you have brain issues, it's not just because of your brain. If you have hormone issues, it's not just because of your ovaries, your testicles. If you have thyroid issues, it's not just because of your thyroid. Nothing works in a silo. When I talk about estrogen detoxification, which is a hot topic that I talk about a lot, I always remind people detoxification, the active detoxification doesn't work in a silo. So I'm talking about estrogen, but everything you eat, breathe, drink, swallow, put on your body goes through the liver predominantly and goes through detoxification as well. So, here's a classic example people can probably relate to. Women on the birth control pill decide to go on a quote liver cleanse, liver detox. They follow an influencer. They've decided I'm going to do this 2-week detox plan. It's going to be great. What they forget, what nobody has told them, is when you quote speed up, support, improve detoxification, that means you speed up, support, improve the processing of your birth control pill. And it renders it less effective, or any medication you're taking. So I literally have had people, when I bring this up, comment to me, DM to me, yep, that's how I got pregnant. Like, I didn't know. Here I was doing a detox thinking it's helping everything else but the medication I'm taking, and it sped it up faster. And so then that's just one tiny example of everything in the body is connected. You can't affect your eczema without affecting everything else. You can't affect your thyroid without affecting everything else. Everything else affects your hormones, right? And so, yes, I do see even practitioners will say to me, they'll send me an email or text me and go, everything about her is fine, except whatever. She has IBS, she has eczema, she has hormonal issues, she has severe brain fog, blah, blah, whatever. I'm like, you may want to clarify, are you sure everything else is fine? Because she seems to have a systemic issue even though you're focused in one area.
Yeah. And it's tough. I mean, it's tough. And from a practitioner standpoint, we may be like, hey, I worked on that. I worked on this. I worked on that. Right. And I'm down to this process. But for the average listener, not even for the physician, but good for the physician too, the allopathic model is more compartmentalized. Yeah. So this is a cardiovascular issue. This is a gut issue. This is a brain issue. This is a neurotransmitter issue. This is a sex hormone issue. And this is an immune issue. And they're all separate systems. And you go to a different person for each thing. And these things don't interrelate. But as Carrie said, I mean, if you have a problem, the thyroid, because this is a thyroid answer podcast, if you have a thyroid problem, you have multiple systems that are challenged and compromised. And I typically tell use the term multi-system adaptive disorder to explain what's going on. Well, I have adrenal fatigue. No, you have multiple systems that are adapting. They're all related to the same root issues. If we can address the root issues, you're going to see probably improvement of your hormones. You're going to see improvement of your cortisol regulation, your adrenal function. You're going to see improvement of your mood, your temperament, your sleep, your respiration, because the root issues drive the adaptive changes, shut down the manufacturing, increase the immune inflammatory response, and then result in altered or adapted function and eventually become dysfunction. And the dysfunction becomes disease. And now we look at that disease as it's a new thing. No, that thing got that way because of years of adaptive and then dysfunctional processes, right?
Yeah. I was reading about Alzheimer's and dementia lately as it relates to blood sugar hormone and females in particular because of the research on estrogen and Alzheimer's. And over and over, I keep reading the quote, like Alzheimer's and dementia, typically the process is happening 10 to 20 years before symptoms show up, not diagnosis, symptoms. So before you even notice, like, man, something's going on with mom's brain, like, gosh, dad is really starting to worry me. That's symptoms. The process of Alzheimer's and dementia was 10 to 20 years prior. And it's the same for the thyroid, right? It's the same for anything else. It doesn't just like switch flipped. Like, gosh, yesterday I was fine. And today, all of a sudden, my thyroid's a problem. It's like, I see what you mean. I understand. But when you understand cellular, what we call physiology, how things work, we know it's been a long time coming. You've had a check engine light on for a long time. And finally the engine's like, forget you. I'm done.
And that's what I talk about with thyroid physiology. I mean, everybody talks about the gland, when the gland becomes dysfunctional. Well, many times people have signs and symptoms, hyperthyroid symptoms, years or decades before they actually have an overt primary hypothyroid condition. And what the literature shows is that by the time they do, they've already lost 90% of the function of the gland by the time they're diagnosed. That's not the beginning of a thyroid condition. Right? It's when you get diagnosed with cardiovascular disease, that didn't develop yesterday with your Big Mac. That's been occurring for like decades, right? But because there's no obvious symptoms, or there's I think sometimes we make this mistake that we think that we got trillions of cells and they all go bad at the same time. And I don't think the general person thinks along that way. They think, oh, my thyroid's bad, right? But really you got trillions of cells, right? And they start to slowly adapt and slowly, start to lose a few, and we adapt and we adapt and we adapt until we no longer can adapt. And now we're symptomatic, and now we're starting to see these greater indications of dysfunction and then eventual disease. But disordered cellular physiology has been going on for a while. And the problem is we don't have great tools to really see that stuff early. And definitely the conventional model, the allopathic model, isn't really set up for that. And it's not their fault, because their primary tools are surgery and drugs. And we don't want them to be intervening. Like the moment we have some indication that the gallbladder is not working well, we don't want to be just cutting it out, right? And so it's either drug it or cut it. If those are the only two tools I have, we don't want that intervention too soon. It's because it's too aggressive, right? We want to make those changes.
Yeah. So, which is why I'm loving like things that the tech, being now working for Rupa, which is a lot of tech, the continuous glucose monitors. Like I am excited for some of these at home, and the wearables. For those who don't know, a continuous glucose monitor is basically a thing you can stick in your arm, and it has a little filament, not a needle, but a little like hair-like filament, and it measures your glucose through the day. So you can get that instant feedback of what did that Big Mac do to you? And how is that different from the salad you ate? And what happens when you do intermittent fasting or don't do intermittent fasting, or don't sleep very well, or exercise in the morning versus exercise at night? And so you do get that nice instant feedback. And I'm excited for those industries to really help humans get the early warnings.
Oh yeah. And right? I think
before it gets too late.
If somebody slapped a continuous glucose monitor on them for 2 weeks and just see what their daily activities and their daily nutrition and sleep and breathing, how that impacts their blood sugar, they would be amazed. Even the things they do that they assume are healthy and what that might do to their blood sugar, or the disagreement they have, or the rush they're in, and what changes from the blood sugar level. I mean, it's eye-opening. And my clients who I've talked into doing it, they're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing, this was good for me. And now I look at what's happening to my blood sugar. And then the other thing I think sometimes people realize when they have those things on is when they think they are like need to eat because they have low blood sugar symptoms and they're shaky, they're like, my blood sugar was high, right? Yeah, because your catecholamines and your cortisol kicked in to help you out already. You didn't probably need that extra meal.
Right. No, it's true.
So you ready for the next question?
Yes.
All right. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but we do have a little bit of a healthcare crisis in this country. Okay. What? Yeah, I know. I know. It's not maybe reported, but it is. I think we do have a healthcare problem. So if I now put Carrie Jones, she is now in control of the healthcare management of this country. You're the health czar, right?
Wow. It's a big job. Talk about stress.
Yeah. What are maybe the top 2 or 3 things you think we could start doing to really turn the health crisis we have around? I mean, we learned that we have a pretty significant health crisis as we went through COVID, right?
Yeah.
And nobody was admitting that except a lot of us in functional medicine in the beginning of that. But now you're starting to see more people we realize it's not going away. And the people that are most affected are those that have chronic health issues and overweight and obese and inflamed. So what is Carrie Jones, head of the health management of the country, what does she do? What's like her top 3 things that she's going to do?
So it's funny. I was thinking about this morning, but in a little bit different light. I think one of the first things I would do, you and I, and a lot of our colleagues and friends and what have you and I, we have a lot of accessibility to clean water, clean food, right? Clean medicine. And so it's a whole lot easier for us to quote unquote stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about this morning I heard a ad, one of those dumb ads again, that was like, we're all in this together. And I was like, no, bitch, we're not. Because some of y'all are on a yacht and some people are on a life raft, not even a true boat. They're just trying not to get the rubber popped. And I feel like that's the same in healthcare. I had heard a woman who was lecturing 2 summers ago. She was talking about underprivileged neighborhoods. And she was like, we don't even have vegetables and fruit in our neighborhoods. We have a lot of fast food, and we have a lot of quick convenience stores full of candy and, alcohol and soda. But she's like, we don't have access to greens and rainbow colored foods and nutrient dense foods like other neighborhoods. And she's like, I would just like my kids to understand what a vegetable is. I would like my kids to choose an apple. I would like my kids to learn beyond peas and carrots as a vegetable. And I was like, yeah, we don't get the accessibility, and 2, we don't we don't get the education from a young age. I am in hormones and I complain all the time that I wish, as a female, although males wish it too, I like every 10 years, we get a recap on what's going to happen for the 10 years going forward. Okay. You're 10, here's what's going to happen as you head into puberty. I know you don't want to hear it. It's awkward and it's embarrassing, but here you go. Okay. You're 20. Here's what happens in your 20s. Here's what to expect. Here's how hormones work. Here's how you make a baby. Here's how you don't. Okay. You're 30. Here's what you prepare for. I wish it was the same in nutrition and exercise and hydration and how to cook. The amount of people that I have met who are like, I don't really know how to cook, but I sure know how to order Uber Eats or get fast food. I wish that started young. And then I wish we had accessibility to it. Because I think if we had the pan information for everyone early, then we can start to help those generational decisions on how to eat, what to eat, cooking, better choices, what have you, and then having accessibility. Now, having said that, I surely would take away a lot of the power of the like soda companies, processed food companies, fast food companies. I feel like they sure have a lot of power, and they sure aren't helping moving chronic conditions in the direction we want it to go in. They're helping to move it forward, not backwards. Now, somebody had said to me, well, I enjoy fast food once in a while. I enjoy, soda once in a while. I'm like, that's fine. The problem is a lot of America doesn't. A lot of America enjoys it every day because they either don't know better or they can't afford it. They don't have the time. They're just trying to get their family fed as fast as possible. And so there's a lot of these, I feel, fundamental issues with healthcare. Yeah, there are a lot of things like, oh, Americans need to, move more and they need to go outside and get some sun and they need to, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. But like, what if you have 4 kids and like a demanding job and money is tight? And when you go to the grocery store, you're doing what you can to feed your family. And so it's like those deep rooted fundamental things that I'm like, yeah, that's what I would do to help fix it.
So
I don't know if you wanted me to get that deep.
No, that's good. So number 1 is better education early. Carrie's
ongoing, yeah. Like start young, starting kids. I mean, look at in public schools, look at what kids eat. Mm-hmm. I was super excited for pizza day, right? It wasn't until I got into high school that we actually had pizza every day. You could get pizza every day. And is that age group, I understand, like that's really fun and all. But when you're young and they're like, all right, here's lunch. And it's like 3 chicken nuggets, chocolate milk
and fries.
I'm like, show me the nutrition. It's no wonder kids can't pay attention, aren't doing well. Chronic disease starts young. Mood and behavior is a possibility. I'd feel probably like crap too on chicken nuggets, fries, and chocolate milk every day.
Right.
Every day.
So the book, like what to expect when you're expecting, Carrie's going to write a book.
Yes.
Nutritionally, what to expect as you're aging. So if you eat this is what happens, right? The second thing is to
accessibility. Yeah. Right.
And potentially reduce the funding for that makes junk food cheap and keeps healthy food expensive. Yeah. Right. When you can buy a bottle of soda for less than a bottle of water, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's 100% true. And so that's what I would do. That's where I would start anyway.
All right.
If you to me.
So that's 2. Did you have one more or are you good with 2?
Those are pretty big. That's going to take me a lot of time. Like I said, I mean, there are the day-to-day things that, you and I talk about, our colleagues in functional medicine talk about, and they're great if you already have those foundations. It's like, take time for yourself and journal and find loving communities and, make sure you get 8 hours of sleep and sleep in complete darkness. Like those are fantastic. And I fully believe those as well, if you have the foundations. But if you're like, look, I don't even have the money to pay rent, and so what I'm doing is buying fast food to keep my family alive, I don't really care about making sure I sleep in darkness. Like, that's not my priority right now. I'm like, yeah, I get it. So let's help alleviate a lot of that stress of there's nothing, you don't have accessibility to healthy food. And by the way, I totally have people who've written me that are like, I would like to eat healthy. I was never taught how to. I wasn't taught it in school. I didn't grow up that way. My family didn't grow up that way. And now I'm learning on my own, and it's hard. Like, yeah, that's why I wish we had these. I wish it was taught young, and then I wish we got refresher courses as we went through life.
I would add like one more to the point. And I
Please.
think that means we need to do is put the financial responsibility for our own health back in our hands. And that it does not make people feel good. I think insurance should cover it. Listen, you're still paying for it, but somebody else is making your healthcare decision. If you had to take the money out of your pocket and pay every physician for their value and their worth, it would totally change the game, because you wouldn't continue to go to a practitioner if you had to pay them $300 per visit if you weren't seeing benefit. I think a lot of people get caught up in it, like, hey, it's covered by my $20 copay, so that's why I see the person. Are you seeing benefit? No, I'm not. If it was I got to pay first and then I get reimbursed type model, then it would be like, oh, I'm not paying for that. I'm not getting benefit from that. Like, well, wait a minute. This is the solution as a statin for the rest of my life. If that's going to cost me $70 every month. Is there another option? Yeah, you can do these things. But when it's $10 and somebody else is paying the rest of it, it doesn't hurt so bad. So I think we have to, and I've said that a couple of times, and I know a couple people got irritated with me, like, well, I can't afford it. Well, if you weren't paying a third, somebody else, you're still paying regardless how you look at it. But I'd rather be the person who purchases it, who makes the purchase and has control of the purchase, and then get reimbursed, than the person who doesn't have control and somebody else is dictating it, and I'm just the passenger in the back seat. Thoughts?
But you're also educated to know that. So if we started out decades ago at a young age teaching kids and families this, then over time, I think that's an amazing model. Absolutely. And I say all the time to people, you can fire your healthcare practitioner. It's okay. Or like me, I like my primary care. She's just not a functional medicine expert. So she's part of my team, but she's not who I go to for anything functional medicine related. And so when somebody says to me, well, my insurance covers, this person, but they're not really helping me. I'm like, well, if you like them, keep them, but just let's find you somebody else to add to your team. There is literally no hard and fast rule around you. You have to stay with your doctor. You can't change doctors. You can't fire your doctor or whoever, your practitioner, PA, nurse practitioner, whatever. You can add to your team. You can subtract to your team. So I think your model is fantastic. If you had the education in the first place to be like, is there another option? Here's what's going on in my life. Here are the changes I've made. If their practitioner makes recommendations, do they even have that accessibility in the first place? So I think we'd still have to get the education young across the entire US, and then we can switch to that, because you and I can do that. I am happy to say, right, I'm not paying you $300 and you're not getting me well, I'm moving on. Whereas somebody else who doesn't know that's an option. I think you and I both know that whatever happens, it has to start, and there's going to be a transition. This is like bringing alternative fuels in, right? There's people that want to make, all right, everybody start driving an electric car tomorrow. Right? Like, okay, we'll crash the whole power grid, right? So we can't do that, but somehow we've got to come up with strategies. But I got two of yours. I added one. I got one final question, and then I'm going to let you go. Okay, perfect. And that is my opinion regarding why a lot of people struggle or have health issues or not aware of them sooner, is because we don't really have a great definition of what health is or a way to measure it. So how does Carrie Jones, health czar, how do we redefine what health is or isn't, and what steps can we take to do a better job to monitor health versus monitoring for disease, to like the kind of what the allopathic model is doing? And I think that model is good. They're monitoring for disease, but if we're talking about healthcare,
that's not what we're doing well in this country. We're doing good we're doing disease management. So how does Carrie Jones Health Czar redefine health so that people understand it? Because what I don't like is health is optimal physical, emotional, and chemical well-being. Okay, then what's well-being? That's just when you're healthy, right? So you can't use the same words to redefine each other. That's not fair. So how does Carrie Jones define health, and what do you think as the health czar we need to do for better detection or monitoring and management of health?
I feel like, again, I am going to sound like a broken record. A lot of this goes back to education. I think a lot of people don't even know what's normal in their body. So healthy or unhealthy as you and I would look at it or view at it, or our opinion. Again, going back to hormones, the number of times that I had women that said to me, I didn't know that. I didn't know that was normal. I didn't know that was abnormal. I didn't know that was supposed to happen. Women in their 50s who still don't understand their period or their menstrual cycle or what's happening to them. They've had children, and I'm like, how did you not know that? They're like, I don't know. Why would I need to know that? And I get it, but at the same time, if they knew it, if they knew what the body was supposed to do, then if the body wasn't doing that, then it's like, again, a check engine light. They would be like, wait a minute, I was taught that I'm not supposed to have severe 10 out of 10 cramps at my period. That's not normal. That's not healthy. Let's evaluate. I need to go get this evaluated versus, well, I've always had 10 out of 10 cramps. My sister has 10 out of 10 cramps. My mom has 10 out of 10 cramps. That's normal. Common doesn't mean, healthy. Mm-hmm. So I think it goes back to a lot of that. A lot of people just don't even understand how their body works. We read those cute books as kids, or sometimes kids get about anatomy books for kids or how stuff works for kids. I'm like, I feel like as adults, some of us should still read those same kid books and just sort of mature them through the years, because I think that would be helpful. So when I define healthy, I mean, a lot of it goes back to that baseline, what I expect the body to do biochemically and physiologically. And if it's not doing that, and people are saying, I don't feel good, then we have a problem.
Yeah, it's tough, right? It's tough to make a definition of what health is, because it isn't like a thing, right?
Yeah. And we adapt, right? As humans, how many of your patients have you improved and they said, I didn't know how crappy I felt. We don't have a choice as humans. We push through. We don't get a lot of time off. We don't have a lot of support. We have a lot of stress as humans, and chronic conditions are viewed as common. The ads on TV, our friends have them, our family has them. It's viewed as like, no big deal. Just take this medication or surgery. You'll be fine. And yet they still feel terrible. And then they see somebody like you or me, and they're like, holy crap, I had no idea how bad I felt. I just thought that was normal. I didn't realize every day I was running at about a 4 out of 10, pretty low. That I didn't realize that, because we just push through. Yeah.
And for the listeners, I'll plug, I've got a book coming out called The Thyroid Debacle.
Yes,
and in there, I kind of talk about health as a spectrum, right? And so we think of it's this place. I'm healthy or I'm not healthy. And really, and Carrie was alluding to that it's really, that it's almost like a scale or a gradient. There's levels of health and there's levels of sickness and illness. And I think we do need to have a better way to define it, because the absence of symptoms or a state of well-being, most people wouldn't even understand what the state of well-being is to begin with. And the absence of symptoms, as Carrie said, you could be asymptomatic and have all kinds of health issues going on and still be asymptomatic, or just not aware that those are actual problems. Like you're not even listening to the alarm going off. Like, the alarm going off, that thing's always going off. That's not unusual, right? Or it's always smoky in the house. Right? No, I think it's on fire. No, it's always smoky like this, right? So we need to have a better definition. Is Carrie, as the health czar, is going to work on that. And then I think the other piece to that is we have a set of standards for what disease is. Mm-hmm. I think it would be helpful in the future if we do a better job defining what an optimal range is and let people know that actually may exist, and then get people to understand that those labs that we monitor aren't the problem. They are indications of the body's changing and adapting to a given set of stressors. So if a value is out of the optimal range, maybe we should take notice. Mm-hmm. And that's where definitely from a functional medicine perspective, we take a look at it a little differently. But you may not need drugs or surgery yet until you're out of that lab reference range, which is really really a failure range, right?
Right.
All right. So I'm going to let you finish up. Anything super important you want to let people know about regarding Rupa Health? You got to tell them about the podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
Yes, the podcast.
Where can they listen to it?
Eric was on. It's the Root Cause Medicine podcast. I'm the new host, so it's a newer podcast. You can find it just like Eric's podcast on all the places you typically listen to podcasts. And if you're a practitioner listening to this and you're thinking, man, one-stop shopping for labs sounds fantastic, it's free to sign up. rupahealth.com. All
right. And for anybody who does not follow Carrie on Instagram, but you're interested in health and hormones and functional medicine, you have to go follow her. She's a load of great information and little skits that are good. A lot of my patients follow Carrie and just love the information they get. The skits are good. The information's awesome. So I truly appreciate you coming back on the podcast. I'm happy for you in your new role. I know you're going to do great things at Rupa. I can't wait to see what happens. So thank you for coming on the podcast, and everybody, thank you for listening. Share this episode with your friends and go find Carrie's Root Cause Medicine podcast and listen to that as well. Take care, everybody.